Hello, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I'm going to be sounding rather nasally because I apparently have one of the worst immune systems ever, and I just seem to be getting cold after virus after bug after, but that is just going to be put to the side for now. You're going to just have to take my apology for sounding really nasally, and I really hope that you can get past it, because like I say, I don't foresee there being a time in the immediate future that I don't have a cold and that I don't sound like this. And I really just wanted to get this filmed. I haven't been able to upload for a couple of weeks because of that, because I've obviously not been well, my kids haven't been well, and there's just been a lot going on. But I finally have an hour to myself this morning, and I wanted to take that time to just sit and kind of debrief on my ADHD kind of reassessment, if you like. So if you haven't already seen my kind of vlog that I did the day that I had my last, or like my first actual ADHD assessment, then I will link it down below or in a card for you to go and have a look. But basically the gist of it was, it was a bad day. Like, I had my son at home when he wasn't meant to be, and I felt crap, and it was just so annoying because I really wanted to kind of reschedule the assessment, but I read that you could only reschedule it twice, and I was like, yeah, but what if I need to reschedule it again after I do this, and then I can't get it? And like, there was just like a lot of pressure, so I was like, I'm just gonna go with it, hope for the best and see what happens. And as it was, it didn't go well because I was just a mess. I couldn't concentrate. Like I say, I had my son there and everything, so we left it with my therapist, what do you call them, psychologist, I'm not sure, the assessor. I left with her saying that she would get the admin people to contact me to rebook another like half an hour so that we could kind of talk through things and stuff, in hopes that I was on my own on that occasion. And I had that last week and I was on my own in the end, which was brilliant. So basically what came out of that was my diagnosis. So I don't know exactly like a type or anything, but she did say that I have got ADHD, which I feel like it's one of those things when you're waiting for it, you're just like, you're waiting for that answer and or hoping for that answer, but then when they actually tell you, you're like, yeah, I know. I knew that. I didn't need you to confirm that. So it's a bit of a like, I don't know, like, it was such an amazing moment, but at the same time it was like, yeah, okay, cool. And that's kind of what I wanted this video to be about. This is kind of my like how I feel post-diagnosis, basically, and that is kind of like the general kind of feeling of it. But my immediate kind of feelings once I got off that Teams call, my immediate feelings were, one, validation, and just, like I say, kind of confirmation of what I already knew, and just like an explanation, but then equal parts, fuck, like, wow, like thinking back to like my younger self struggling and stuff, and just knowing that something should have been done back then. Like, I think just especially being a parent now, especially being a parent to a neurodivergent child, like, I just wouldn't want her to have to go through that, and knowing that I did, and knowing that there probably was room for support had I been diagnosed back then, it just makes me feel a bit like, ugh. It's funny because obviously I know that I can't do anything about that now, and, you know, nothing's going to change the past sort of thing. But at the same time, you can't help but think back to, well, things could be so different. Funnily enough, I spoke to my therapist about it and kind of said, or he said, you know, what are you kind of seeking from the diagnosis sort of thing? Like, what kind of feelings are you kind of wanting to feel? And I said those exact things, of validation and stuff, but equally I don't want to feel the frustration of what could have been. And he kind of said, well, you know, if you had have got the diagnosis then, for argument's sake, if you had have got a diagnosis when you were a teenager and it had changed things, like, what would it have changed? Or what do you think it would have changed? And I said, I think I probably would have completed school. I would have had some qualifications. It may have helped give me a bit of clarity. Like, I don't know. And it's so hard because I'm very much a person now that is kind of, I don't know, like, I try not to have regrets, and I try to kind of think, well, everything happens for a reason, and just I'm a wing it person, and I just kind of go with it. So it's hard to now think that, it's hard to have those feelings of, but what could have been, and what, like, things, what would they have looked like, how different would they have been and stuff, because even if I'd have had a diagnosis, that's not to say that things would have been any different, especially because, like, when I was at school, it was like the early 2000s, so there was less support available, I think, less knowledge as well around kind of neurodivergence and stuff. So yeah, I feel very, well, last week particularly, so I had my assessment on the Tuesday afternoon, and then within 48 hours of that, I actually stopped breastfeeding my youngest, and those two things together, oh boy, wow, a lot of emotion, between those two things. Like, I was not prepared for the emotions that last week brought to me, although, but it's weird because those, and I'm only mentioning the breastfeeding thing because those things were, like, so similar in that, like, I was so desperate to stop feeding him, but at the same time I was really sad for that chapter of my life to be over, sort of thing. Like, he's my last baby, like, this is the last time I'm going to breastfeed, and I don't know, like, it's so hard. And then, like I say, it's just the same feelings having got my diagnosis. It's a feeling of, like, oh, like, I'm so glad it's over, I know the answer, but equally, like, oh, it's so frustrating, maybe even more so because, like, now, because going forward, like, my plan, like, with the psychologist, was that I would join the waiting list for titration, for medication, and it's a long wait. So I went through the NHS, like, right to choose route. So essentially I had my diagnosis, like, privately, but it was funded via the NHS. So I'm on the titration list via that private provider. If anyone wants to know, I used Psychiatry UK, which I'm not 100% sure I would recommend. If I'm being completely honest, their waiting list is quite a lot longer because they're one of the first private providers to have offered the NHS right to choose, so their waiting lists are so much longer than a lot of others. But yeah, I don't know, I just feel like the whole kind of process has been a bit muddy, and not particularly neurodivergent friendly, which is just ironic. So yeah, that's who I'm using, and now I'm just on this roughly 8-month waiting list for titration, and I'm hopeful, and I think that's been one of the feelings that I have felt this week, is just hopefulness, and just kind of, I don't know, like, I've ticked this thing off my list, my to-do list, my mental to-do list, And one of the things, like I was trying to explain to her, one of the things I kind of struggle with the most is like I could have a list, as long as my body, of things to do, be that admin-y stuff, housework, like, you know, stuff to buy for the kids, like such random things. I could have it on a list, and until I got to the end of the process with one thing, so for example, this assessment, so obviously it started with ring the doctors, have that first initial contact, have the referral put in, do the paperwork for that referral, and obviously I did the paperwork for the right to choose as well. Did that, then it's the wait for, you know, 18 months or so, however long it was. And then it's, okay, right, I've got an email, I have to then go on and book the actual call, which was in a couple of weeks' time, have that, get a diagnosis. Like, it's a long process, and me, even though at the point that I had kind of sent off the forms and I was at the point of waiting, that I feel like to a kind of typical person would be the point that they could be like, okay, right, I can tick that off my to-do list, let's go on to the next thing. I couldn't. I could not tick this off my to-do list until I'd had my assessment and until I had had the diagnosis. And in that respect, I feel so much lighter, and I feel like I can kind of just see a bit clearer and things like that, and it feels so good. And to think potentially that medication could maybe do that on a longer term basis and just generally kind of give me that, like, it just gives me, like I say, so much kind of hopefulness. And I'm just really excited for the future now. I really am. I had a little coffee break because I cannot stop coughing at the moment, so sorry. But yeah, so that's basically kind of where I'm at with it all. This feels so surreal to even film this. Like, I genuinely didn't think a couple of weeks ago when I filmed that initial vlog that I would be doing this. After how the end of the call went, how emotional I was, and kind of just the things that she was saying, I was a bit like, I kind of felt like I was being sent back to the drawing board sort of thing, and that maybe my kind of symptoms and my feelings weren't being validated, and that maybe I was being silly. That's how it felt. But now it's like, oh, like I say, I've just got that clarity. I've just got that, like, just that fuzz is just like lifting now. That like brain fog just around this one aspect of my life, which at the moment is rather complicated. There's just so many things going on. Like I say, there's so many little things that I've wanted to do over the last couple of months, well, most of this year, in fact, that I haven't been able to do, and that like literally the day after, I was smashing them out, all these little things I had to do, and it just honestly felt so good. I mean, I might have had just a bit of like dopamine hit from just getting off that call, but like I say, just not having to think anymore about that thing, and to be able to say, yeah, cool, I've got ADHD, like, and not have to think, oh, actually, I don't have a diagnosis. Like, I actually have one now. I can say it without worrying. It's just, yeah, it just feels good. But anyways, I hope you're all doing well. And if you have any questions about like the whole process or just anything in general, pop them down below. I would like to do like a general kind of Q&A at some point kind of in the near future, maybe before Christmas, I don't know. I'm hoping at some point I can maybe film in front of the Christmas tree again. I'm currently filming in my daughter's bedroom because it's actually the nicest lighting. Downstairs in my living room where I last filmed a video like this, it's so dark. It's actually snowing today, which is just mental because it's not even the end of November yet. But yeah, it's a very dull day, but it's nice and bright up here, and that is exactly how I'm feeling right now. So I'm just rolling with the brightness. But yeah, I hope you all do well, and I will speak to you all very soon. Bye guys.